been a while since I stood here to do an introduction to a moth trapping video from Misson Carr, but here I am, some 6 weeks or so since the last one I've made, the 30th. July the 21st today, and I'm hoping to have a nice session of a couple of hours or so and see what moths come into the light. Conditions not as ideal as I thought they were going to be, and as they forecasted a certain amount of cloud. There isn't any cloud, and they forecasted temperatures of around 17 going down to about 15 during the time that I'll be here. Well, I think it's about 15 already, and I think that the temperature is quickly going to drop, especially if the skies remain as clear as they are. But it was a nice drive here, very pleasant. Sun was out everywhere, just a dust bowl, and the grass verges just like straw. That's the effect of the prolonged hot and very dry conditions over the last month or so. So, time to get set up, and I think I'm going to set up at the front of the gates here. Just a reminder that Misson Carr has no access, although it's a Notts Wildlife Trust Reserve. Access is only given with a written permit, and the access track itself is strictly private, and there is no entry or use of this track unless authorised. So, with that public service announcement out of the way, time to get set up. So we're off and running at an earlier time. The nights are drawing in. Funny enough, I've just realised that we're a month already since the shortest night, the longest day. So let's see what Misson Carr can deliver. Well, it's early doors, but a couple of moths have actually come in. One is the obligatory water veneer, which is always one of the first moths to come in this time of year when they are flying, and the other one is Blastobasis adostella, another very common species, and one which, if you're going to get into your micros, is one that you're soon going to learn. So 2 moths all ready to start us off, and the moon, as you can see, is behind my head. I've been trying to work out the direction of the breeze, and I thought it was feeling more of a northeasterly, but apparently according to the weather it's southerly or southeasterly. Will it bring in any migrant moths, I wonder? Well, there's not that many moths racing around the sheet. We've got a chance to have a quick look at this pebble hook tip. The hook tips to the forewings are probably the most extreme of the hook tips that we have here in Nottinghamshire, and this is one of my favourites. It's a beautifully marked moth. This one is showing some signs of age and wear, aren't we all? But this is a moth that will probably turn up in your suburban or urban garden, but it's a really nice species too. That sort of background coloration of a very light, almost fawn colour, and various markings, sort of wavy lines, and of course the dots on the wings too. We've been lucky that this one hasn't been forced away. So that's pebble hook tip, and nice to see one of those come into the light. Well, it's getting busy and difficult to film individual moths, but here's another chance. And what a moth this is. This is a large emerald, by far the largest of all the emeralds that we have here. And what a beauty! It's absolutely immaculate. My favourite coloured moth, of course, but when you see these you think it's just a big green butterfly, and occasionally they can be found at rest on the upper sides of leaves during the day. But what a species this is. An absolute fabulous moth. It really is beautifully coloured in that sort of light sage green. It's a cracking thing. And occasionally it will turn up even in suburban gardens. This is on my list at home, if I remember right, but they don't often settle down at the light and allow themselves to be filmed. I'm glad this one has. Well, I need to do something of an update because there's a lot of moths coming in. Not massive numbers, but there's so many coming in that need identifying and checking, and I'm having to continually look at the sheet. And even now, as I've glanced at the sheet, I can see a moth that I haven't had already this evening. But just going through the list of what's in the book, one really nice, attractive pyramid is Evergestis pallidata. I don't know if it's a moth that I've showed before, but I tend to catch it here, but it's not a moth that I would normally catch at most of the sites that I go to, but it's a very attractive species and one to look out for. If I just go through and just see what Recavaria leucotella is a nice one, and quite a good moth in Nottinghamshire, and very distinctive it is too. As you'll have seen from the photos, it's quite unmistakable. Notocilia roberana, there's another name to conjure with. One of those in, not a moth that I catch very often. Going through the rest, there's good numbers of water veneer and blastobasis adostella, and looking at some other micros, and the first Agrifola tristella of the summer is on the sheet somewhere. Just going back through some macros. White satin is here somewhere, and I can see there's a lesser swallow prominent that's just dropped in too. Scalloped hook tip, that's a nice member of the hook tip there, and we're on to a second brood of those. Linkness is a moth that I might not have showed you because it's not a moth I catch a lot of, to be honest, but there's been a couple here on the sheet and I don't think they are still here. Dusky sallow is an absolute beauty of a moth, very, very nice, and often found nectaring on flowers like thistles or knapweeds during the day. It's quite common that you'll find that in grassy fields and roadside verges. And the first rosy rustic of the year. So a good selection of moths. There's more that I haven't written down yet. Lots of water veneers now that I look around the light, and it's a really nice session. Well, as you can see, this is certainly a water veneer night, and this is just a fraction of the water veneers that are here. They don't actually look like moths, to be honest. Well, I don't think they do, but it's not very often that I get such a concentration. Lots and lots of them. Well, in amongst the melee of water veneers, there is this pristine dusky thorn. Very nicely marked thorn. This is a terrific species. The only downside is, again, it's another moth that you tend to associate with the latter part of summer. But it certainly adds a dash of colour to the sheet. Moth in a pot time. And this is a good one. You can't see it, you might be able to make it out. It's sat on the inside of the lid there, and as all moth trappers will tell you, when you're looking on your sheet to see what's coming, you instantly know when there's something that you've never seen before. And it was the shape of this one. It's a very narrow shape, and it has a common name, spindle knothorn. If I refer to my book here, Nephopteryx angustella, and I've no idea of any recent records, not been able to check them. It is on the Nottinghamshire list, and it may well be increasing, but I have a feeling this is a really good moth for Nottinghamshire. I've certainly never trapped one before, and I can't recollect anyone else having this before and posting it on social media. So the moth of the evening so far, and the sheet is typical of Misson Carr. Well, just look at this. This is a moth that brings back some memories for me. This is a black arches. It always looks like someone's been doodling on the forewings of this. Maybe Mother Nature couldn't decide what to give this moth in terms of markings, and ended up just scribbling all over it. We could perhaps call this the doodle moth, but it's a super thing. This is a male, and the males have fabulously feathered antennae. Perhaps the feathering of those antennae is somewhat slightly over the top, but whenever I see these, my mind goes back to a night when Dillis and I were trapping on the edge of Loud Wood, and one of these dropped onto the sheet. We were ecstatic, and then when we traced the moth's history and occurrences in Nottinghamshire, discovered that the one we had was the first in Nottinghamshire for many years. It suddenly reappeared again out of nowhere after being absent, and within a couple of nights other people started catching them, and then we were catching them regular wherever we trapped, and it's now a common moth. Amazing how the fortunes of species can suddenly change. Well, it's not very often drinker moths settle down at the light. This is the only one that's come in so far, and it's settled down very nicely on the edge of the sheet here. They do tend, when they come in, to sort of bounce around. They are quite thuggish, really, the males, but nice to get the chance to have a look at one. And as you can see, the swarm of water veneers continues to grow. It's absolute bedlam. And it must be remembered that all of these moths are free to fly. There's no actual trapping of the moths. The moths aren't hurt or injured in any way. All are free at the end of the night. Including this lot. And it's nearly the same on the other side of the light. You know, I haven't the faintest idea of what the time is or how long I've been here. No good going out, I suppose, and then worrying about what the time is. It's just brilliant to sit and watch moths come and go from the sheet. The yellowtail that's in as I sit here. Eucosma obumbratana. There's a name to conjure with. There's a couple of those in. Lots of Scrobipalpa ocellatella. Silver Y has just dropped in, but I never thought I would see the day, or see the night, I suppose, really, to be more accurate, where I would largely just not give small mottled willow even a cursory second glance or a first glance. Tonight they're just another tick or another dash in the notebook. And there's probably going to be another brood yet, or newer arrivals. But it's nice to at last be part of the small mottled willow club. It's great when a species that's always been rare, very uncommon, but best in Nottinghamshire, is having such a good year. And everybody is catching them. Well, I say that, I can dare say there'll be some subscriber who'll say, well, I haven't had one yet. But chances are, one will come at some time. I suppose I'll have to have a look to see what the time is. But certainly glad that I've come to Misson Carr this evening. I wasn't sure where to go, but I do like it when you're having to look at the sheet and keep going through the moss just to see something that you'd missed. And tonight it's a full-time job. And another favourite moth which seems to be doing quite well again after struggling for a number of years. This, of course, is a magpie, quite appropriately named, and a moth, another one which brings back many fond memories of looking for these caterpillars in my parents' garden. They used to be there every year on a whole bit of gooseberry that grew in the hedge. The gooseberry's still there, but the moth seems to have long since departed, and I've not seen larvae on that gooseberry for many, many years. But nice to see these when they arrive at the light. I think it's just time for another update that moths still coming in, of course, but it is getting late now. I have no idea what the time is, but I am having the first thoughts about packing up. But some nice moths have come in, and just go through the highlights of the last lots of moths since I did go through the species that have come in. In terms of micros, there are decent numbers of diamondback moth, Plutella xylostella. There's more than what I thought, actually, to be honest. So it's not been a bad night for migrants. Having a look at what else, there's a good number of bird cherry ermine that are in. Argyrestia godartella is a quite variable moth, but usually very golden. You'll see these occasionally if you're wandering around birch woodlands during the daytime, quite easily disturbed from foliage. An attractive little moth. Epinotia nicella is another nice tortrix, a small one, and the first of the year, if I remember correctly. In terms of macros, a lesser cream wave has just dropped in and is tucked away somewhere in amongst the melee. And first of the second brood, Chinese character, which you'll be looking at a photo of now. That's just not long since appeared. Raw bordered yellow undoing, big brutes of moth, and that's the first one that's come in, not had large yellow undoing. Mind you, I'm quite happy about that, and I imagine that most of the moths on the sheet are. We're just going through, and fen wainscot is a nice one to get, and that's quite easy to determine because it has a real sort of gold, almost brassy luster to it. The wings are really shining more than on any other wainscot. Couple of lime speck pugs and a cream bordered green pea, and another thorn, canary shouldered thorn this time, first of the autumn. Dare I say it? I'll say late summer instead, but a very attractive moth and nice one to see. I would rather not see them for about another few weeks or so, but the year moves on, and I need to move on with a cup of tea and then decide how much longer I'm going to stop for. Well, it's 1:45. I'm tempted to stay a little bit longer. But I'm not entirely sure. One of those feelings again that something could drop in. Though I have got one new moth for me, and a rare one for Nottinghamshire, and a new species for the website, once it's photographed in the light of day tomorrow. But I've been here some 3 hours now. Well, what a session it's been. Very busy. We're on to nearly 80 species. And I could stop quite easily, but my golden rule, I have to follow it. And that's to pack up and be gone, and the moths still have at least an hour's darkness in which they can sort themselves out. It's been probably a better session than I expected, and the temperature is still 15 degrees, so the forecasters were right. So I think it's a steady pack up. We'll head for home once I've had a look on the sheet and gone through what's on it, just to make sure I've not missed anything, because that's entirely likely. It's a shame that you can't just pack up like that, because then I'd stay an extra half an hour.